Richard Power Sayeed, former Labour Party official, I mean, really, is that what the Labour Party should be doing? Or should they be actually stopping, pulling up the wagon and going, hang about, have we got this right? Because perhaps what's happening today is a public rejection of net zero policies, a public rejection of things like scrapping the winter fuel allowance. Do you think that he's being a little bit too lackadaisical in his approach to reform?
Anybody who thinks that today's results are because people don't like net zero is so completely off their trolley and obsessed with Twitter. I mean, it wouldn't even be worth having a conversation with them. You can be against it if you like. That's fine. You know, you've got the right to have your opinions. But every single poll from all of the polling companies that tell us how well reform's doing, they also tell us that net zero is popular in the country, that even if you look at like Labour to Conservative switchers or Tory to Reform switchers, it's even popular with them. The number of people who are upset about net zero is about the same number of people who work for the Reform Party and talkTV.
People are upset with the legacy parties, OK? That is very clear. That is abundantly evident today. Do you think Sir Keir Starmer's sitting there and thinking this is fantastic, rubbing his hands together with glee, thinking this is a headache just for the Conservative Party? Or is he looking at the result in Runcorn and Helsby, what was once a Labour safe seat? OK, Reform only won it by 6 votes, but won it they did. Do you think he's suddenly going, blimey, this is going to be a bit of a headache for us as well?
So I think the kind of short answer is we'll have to wait to see the full results, because it's in that really granular detail that we'll get the really kind of important political information. But I think that probably by the end of the weekend, when we've got them all in, what we'll be saying is the people who are to the left of the centre were more willing to vote tactically than the people to the right of the centre. And ultimately, that's very good for Labour, right? And there's a very clear reason for that. Because even if some people are not particularly inspired by Keir Starmer, there's very few people, they exist, but there's very few people who actively dislike him, whereas there are an enormous number of people who actively dislike Nigel Farage and or Kemi Badenoch.
I don't think that sort of plays out when you look at that. Look, I haven't got them in front of me, but maybe one of my brilliant producers can do that. But when it comes to the sort of personal approval ratings of the politicians, it seems to me that Nigel Farage tops the charts.
I mean, it's simply a fact that he's a far more polarising figure than Keir Starmer. So the result of any election in which you're putting these individuals up against each other, or indeed, you know, if Jenrick ended up leading the Conservative Party, I think that is always going to really play into the hands of Labour, because the fact is that people want somebody who they can trust, and they're willing to vote tactically to oppose somebody who they think doesn't have the interests of this country, you know, at heart. They look at Nigel Farage, they look at somebody who has repeatedly said that he wants to get rid of our publicly funded NHS, and they just think that's not somebody who I can trust.
I mean, I'm looking at these results right now, and they seem to be painting a very different picture to me. Reform 113 councillors thus far, Conservatives 47 thus far, Labour just 15 thus far. Now, you might say, well, it's because most of those elections were actually happening in Conservative-held councils, but that's because the Labour Party saw fit to cancel a lot of them. If those elections had gone ahead, we might be looking at a bit of a Labour bloodbath as well, mightn't we?
Oh, I think we definitely would have seen some Labour councillors, a large number of Labour councillors lose their seat under those circumstances. I think that the reasons for cancelling those elections, not cancelling, postponing them, were like technical and actually quite sensible. But I get why people are annoyed when they're expecting an election and it doesn't happen. The key point, right, is that minimum wage has gone up. Wages are rising faster than inflation. Finally, you've protected the triple lock on pensions. That's the government making that decision. It's absolutely the right one. NHS waiting lists are finally coming down, and we've delivered 2 million NHS appointments faster than expected. That's the kind of thing that in 4 years' time actually starts to change people's votes and means that they decide to go with the Labour Party. Now, is it certain? Is it locked in? Was today a fantastic result? No, of course not. Ultimately, Labour's got to stay focusing on people's cost of living and on public services, and that is the only way that you win an election. And ultimately, people are going to look at Nigel Farage, the guy who hates the NHS, and they're going to be like, yeah, maybe we don't want him.
Well, they don't seem to be saying that today. In fact, the latest from on the ground is Reform UK have just taken the final votes they need to claim control of Staffordshire County Council. So one council has now declared, and guess what? They have gone Reform. There are still more results to announce, but they now have 34 council seats on that council. They needed 32 to take control. I mean, this is a pretty historic day for Reform, that's for sure. Now, normally, yes, incumbent governments don't do well, you know, in the midterms, but this is not even a year into his tenure in number 10. And it ain't looking brilliant for the Labour Party right now. Normally after this sort of result, what happens is heads roll. There's a reshuffle. There's a rejuvenation on the horizon. Do you think Sir Keir Starmer is going to be calling a cabinet meeting next week and saying to certain individuals, do you know what? You've had your time. You're going to be swapped out?
I dare say there will be a little bit of that. I don't know how dramatic it will be. I think the thing is that most people, not just in the Labour Party, but around the country and definitely in the opposition parties, everybody's incredibly conscious of the fact that whilst Labour can do great things like increasing the minimum wage and protecting the triple lock, and indeed really improving the NHS, which I think we will have done in the next 4 years, ultimately, like, this is such a terrible geopolitical and global economic context, and whoever's in government is really, really at the whim of whatever Donald Trump and Xi Jinping does. Now, is that an excuse? Does that mean that everybody should just carry on voting for whoever's in power? No, of course not. But it means the strategy of a government is not to turn around when they see some really bad local election results or slightly bad local election results and say, oh, we must change course. Rather, the sensible thing is to say, we've got a plan, we're going to stick to it. And, you know, if Xi Jinping doesn't totally screw things up for us over the next 4 years by, you know, invading Taiwan or whatever it is and upending the global economy,
you're not seem to be a big fan of President Xi. Your lot seem to love a bit of President Xi. They can't go on aeroplanes over to Beijing enough.
You have to be willing to have conversations with even very bad people when they're incredibly powerful. That's always been the case, I'm afraid to say. We're not a global power of the level of Beijing or Washington, and so we don't get the choice about whether we have conversations with these people. I want a government that's pragmatic and is willing to have conversations with the most powerful people in the country. It's very sensible.
Talking about pragmatism and people who are mates of President Xi, certainly Ed Miliband's needed a bit of a helping hand from China to get all of the green stuff for his net zero project. If Doncaster happens to see a bit of a hemorrhage of Labour councillors later on today, could we see Ed Miliband following them out?
You mean out of the cabinet? No, yes. I don't think so, because I think Keir Starmer knows perfectly well that if you're going to protect British bill payers, energy bill payers, from Vladimir Putin and whatever he wants to do to our energy bills, to our gas bills in particular, then you've got to make sure that you build clean energy, homegrown here in the UK. That means creating jobs here in the UK, it means protecting our kids from pollution, and it means creating the investment and the jobs of the future right here, right now, whilst protecting us from Vladimir Putin. Unfortunately, that's not what Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage want us to do. For some reason, they think it's okay for us to be vulnerable to Vladimir Putin's manipulation of our energy bills. I'm really glad that Starmer and indeed Ed Miliband think they're wrong.
Yeah, I'm not sure many people paying those energy bills will agree with you there. But before I let you go, Richard, what is your take home then? You're looking at these results as they come in. Yes, the fat lady hasn't sung just yet, if you can still say that in this day and age. But is it a case of just caution? We can get this back? Or is this looking pretty ominous for you and for the Labour Party?
Well, I think you're wrong to talk about what Labour's doing as caution. I think sticking the course, saying that you've got a plan and you're going to stick to it, and that's how you're going to bring down NHS waiting times even faster than you already have. You're going to bring wages up even faster than you already have. I think that's a very sensible thing to do, but I wouldn't exactly say it's cautious. Labour's done some pretty radical stuff. You know what? putting taxes up on the super rich was a difficult decision to make, but I think it was the morally right one. Saying to people that yeah, you know, we're going to radically change our energy system so that we've got clean, homegrown energy and we're not dependent on gas from an international market that Vladimir Putin can manipulate. That's a radical decision. It was a very different one to the previous Conservative government. It's paying off already, and it's going to carry on paying off. But I don't think that's cautious.
Yeah, I'm not sure we've really decoupled from the wholesale energy market when it comes to our bills, Richard. Thank you so much for your time and for your company. Taxing the rich as well, what, like farmers, hospices and charities under employers' national insurance? I don't know. I'm not really sure Labour get it.